The final battle, humanity's last stand against the alien void. Chapter 1, The Invasion. Earth was under siege. The sky, once a peaceful canvas, now swirled with fire and ash. The Krythons had descended without warning, their ships darkening the horizon like a swarm of locusts. These invaders, wielding technology far beyond humanity's comprehension, razed entire cities in minutes. Towers that had stood for centuries crumbled into dust. Streets, once bustling with life, echoed with the cries of the few who managed to survive the initial onslaught. Captain Sarah Lawson stood atop the ruins of what had once been her home, her eyes fixed on the destruction that stretched out before her. The stench of smoke and decay filled the air, but Sarah remained unmoved. She had seen it all before. The Krythons had torn through her world, ripping away everything she had ever loved, friends, family, her sense of safety. But she was still here, standing firm amidst the chaos, her spirit unbroken. Years of military service had hardened Sarah into a leader, but it was loss that had forged her resolve. She could not afford to grieve anymore. There was no time for tears, no room for fear. Her heart had been hardened by the relentless tide of war, leaving only a burning desire to fight back. She clenched her fists, the cool metal of her sidearm pressing against her palm, a reminder that she was still alive, still capable of striking back. As Sarah surveyed the battlefield, her mind raced. The Krythons were merciless, their tactics brutal and efficient. Human forces, no matter how valiantly they fought, were no match for the alien behemoths. Their weapons barely scratched the Krython armor, and their defenses crumbled like paper before the onslaught. It felt like the end. But Sarah refused to accept defeat. There had to be a way, something they hadn't yet considered, a weakness they hadn't found. She had led her troops through countless skirmishes, each one ending in retreat. Now she was desperate for a solution, anything that could turn the tide. In the midst of her thoughts, a strange signal crackled through her earpiece. It was unlike anything she had heard before, a series of pulses and frequencies that seemed almost deliberate. Her brow furrowed as she listened closely, trying to decipher the message hidden within the noise. "Commander Lawson, do you hear that?" A voice broke through the static, her second-in-command, Lieutenant Gregor, sounding as bewildered as she felt. "I hear it," she replied, her voice steady. "It's coming from space." "The Krythons?" Gregor asked, his tone laced with concern. Sarah shook her head, though she knew he couldn't see her. "No, this is different. Get the tech team on it. I want to know what it is." Hours passed as Sarah and her team worked to trace the signal. It was faint, elusive, as if it were being deliberately hidden. But Sarah was tenacious. She knew that the key to their survival lay in the message carried by those mysterious pulses. Finally, the signal led them to a remote area of space, far from the Krython warships. "Captain, we've pinpointed the source," the tech officer reported. It's coming from an area just outside our solar system." Sarah's heart skipped a beat. Could this be the breakthrough they needed? Without hesitation, she ordered her team to establish contact. Moments later, the screen in front of her flickered to life. A figure appeared, humanoid in shape but clearly alien. Its skin shimmered with a faint silver glow, and its eyes, large and deep-set, held an intelligence that seemed ancient. "Greetings, Captain Lawson," the being spoke in a voice that resonated through the room, each word carrying a weight of authority. "We are the Sylari, and we have been observing your world for many of your generations." Sarah stared at the figure, her mind racing with questions. The Sylari, she had never heard of them, and yet there was something familiar in the way they spoke, as if they had been a part of Earth's history, hidden in the shadows. "You've been watching us?" Sarah asked, her tone wary. "Why now? Why reveal yourselves?" The Sylari's expression softened, almost as if they could sense her skepticism. "We did not interfere before, because it was not our place. But now, the Krythons have come, and they threaten not just your world, but all life. We have faced them before, in another time, on another world. We offer you our alliance, for together, we stand a chance to defeat them." Sarah's eyes narrowed. An alliance? Trust was a rare commodity in times of war, and even more so with an unknown species. But she knew they were out of options. If there was even a sliver of hope in what the Sylari offered, she had to consider it. "What do you propose?" she asked, her voice firm. The Sylari's eyes gleamed with determination. "We will share our knowledge, our technology, but more than that, we will stand beside you in this fight. The Krythons are powerful, but they are not invincible. Together, we can find their weakness, and we can stop them." Sarah felt a spark of something she hadn't felt in a long time: hope. This was the first real chance they had. But it was a chance that came with a price, a leap of faith into the unknown. She took a deep breath, her mind made up. "Then let's not waste any time," she said, her voice carrying the weight of the decision. "We'll fight together." As the transmission ended, Sarah turned to her team, her resolve stronger than ever. The war was far from over, but for the first time since the invasion began, she felt like they had a fighting chance. The Sylari had given them hope, but it was up to humanity to seize it, to turn the tide against the Krythons and reclaim their world. Chapter 2: The Alliance. Tensions simmered beneath the surface as the Sylari delegation arrived at the human military base. The air was thick with unease, a palpable wariness that permeated every interaction. Sarah Lawson stood at the forefront, her gaze steady as she watched the Sylari representatives disembark from their sleek, silver ship. They moved with a grace that seemed almost otherworldly, their forms illuminated by an inner light that cast faint shadows on the ground. Despite the alien presence, the human soldiers kept their weapons close, fingers itching on triggers. Trust was a fragile thing, especially in a time of war, and the Sylari's sudden offer of alliance was met with skepticism. The human leadership, hardened by the brutality of the Krython invasion, could not shake the fear that these new allies might have their own hidden motives. General Marcus Hayes, a grizzled veteran with a permanent scowl etched into his features, voiced the concerns of many. "We don't know what they want from us," he growled, arms crossed tightly across his chest. "For all we know, they could be using us as pawns in their own war." Sarah understood his hesitation. She had shared those doubts herself when the Sylari first made contact. But after seeing the destruction wrought by the Krythons, she knew they couldn't afford to turn away potential allies. The Krythons had pushed humanity to the brink, and without the Sylari's help, their chances of survival were slim at best. "We don't have the luxury of mistrust," Sarah replied, her voice calm but firm. "The Sylari have fought the Krythons before. They know their weaknesses. If we work together, we might have a chance to win this war." Hayes grunted, unconvinced. "Or we might be signing our own death warrant." Before the debate could escalate, the lead Sylari stepped forward. He was tall, with a presence that commanded attention. His skin, shimmering with the same silver hue as the others, contrasted sharply with the deep, thoughtful lines etched into his face. His eyes, a piercing shade of violet, held a depth of experience that made him seem much older than his youthful appearance suggested. "I am General Kael," he introduced himself, his voice carrying a melodic resonance that filled the space between them. "We understand your hesitation. Trust is not given lightly, especially in times such as these. But know this, the Krythons are a threat to us all. We seek no domination, no conquest. Our goal is simple: survival. And we believe that together, we can achieve it." There was a sincerity in Kael's words that struck a chord with Sarah. She had spent years in the company of soldiers, learning to read the subtle cues that revealed a person's true intentions. In Kael, she saw no deceit, only a shared resolve to defeat their common enemy. "We're in this together," she said, stepping forward to meet his gaze. "If we're going to make this alliance work, we need to start by trusting each other. Let's put our doubts aside and focus on what really matters: stopping the Krythons." Kael inclined his head in agreement. "Agreed. To that end, we have brought with us the technology and knowledge necessary to bolster your defenses. We will share our tactics, our weapons, and our understanding of the Krythons, but we must act quickly. The Krythons will not wait." Over the following days, the uneasy partnership began to take shape. The Sylari introduced their advanced technology, shields that could repel Krython energy blasts, weapons capable of piercing their seemingly impenetrable armor, and medical techniques that accelerated healing processes. But it was more than just tools and tactics. It was a merging of minds, a sharing of strategies that bridged the gap between two vastly different species. Human engineers worked side by side with Sylari scientists, their initial caution giving way to curiosity and mutual respect. The Sylari's approach to warfare was unlike anything the humans had seen, emphasizing precision, agility, and coordination over brute force. Their movements were almost dance-like, each step calculated, each action purposeful. It was a stark contrast to the human method of overwhelming firepower, and yet, as they trained together, they began to see the benefits of combining both approaches. Sarah spent much of her time with Kael, the two leaders forging a bond through their shared experiences. Kael spoke of the Sylari's past encounters with the Krythons, battles fought and lost on distant worlds. His voice carried the weight of loss, but also a fierce determination to prevent history from repeating itself. "We have seen entire civilizations fall to the Krythons," Kael confided one evening as they stood on a balcony overlooking the bustling base below. The setting sun cast a golden hue across the landscape, a brief moment of peace in a world consumed by war. But we have also learned from those defeats. The Krythons are powerful, yes, but they are not invincible. They have a weakness, one that we intend to exploit. Sarah's interest peaked. What kind of weakness? Kael turned to her, his expression grave. The Krythons' strength lies in their central command, a hive mind that coordinates their every move. If we can disrupt that command, we can throw them into disarray. But to do so, we must strike deep within their territory, at the very heart of their operation. It will be a perilous mission, but it may be our only hope. The gravity of Kael's words hung heavy in the air. A mission deep into enemy lines, where any misstep could lead to disaster. But it was a risk they had to take. The Krythons had already taken so much from them: homes, loved ones, their sense of security. They couldn't afford to lose anything more. "We'll do it," Sarah said, her voice resolute. "Whatever it takes, we'll do it." Kael nodded, his respect for the human captain growing. "Then let us prepare. Together, we will bring the fight to the Krythons." As the final preparations were made, a new sense of purpose infused the base. Humans and Sylari worked side by side, their initial mistrust giving way to camaraderie. The war was far from over, but for the first time, they were no longer fighting alone. The alliance was fragile, built on the tenuous threads of necessity and hope. But as Sarah watched the human and Sylari soldiers readying themselves for the coming battle, she felt a spark of optimism. They had found common ground, a shared determination to protect their worlds from a common foe. And with that unity, they would face the Krythons, not as two separate forces, but as one. Chapter 3. The Betrayal. The vastness of space stretched endlessly before them as the joint human-Sylari team embarked on their perilous mission. Captain Sarah Lawson piloted the lead vessel, her hands steady on the controls, her mind focused on the task ahead. The darkness of space was punctuated only by the distant glimmers of stars, an eerie calm before the storm they were about to unleash upon the Krythons. Beside her, General Kael monitored the mission's progress, his violet eyes reflecting the cold determination that had brought them this far. Behind them, the crew, both human and Sylari, moved with practiced precision, each individual playing their part in the intricate dance of preparation. The plan was simple in theory, yet fraught with danger. Strike at the heart of the Krython command center, disrupt their hive mind, and cripple their ability to wage war. But the execution would be anything but straightforward. They were deep within enemy territory, surrounded by hostile forces that would stop at nothing to protect their stronghold. The team had trained for this moment, their trust in each other forged through countless hours of shared hardship. The initial mistrust between humans and Sylari had given way to a bond that transcended their differences. They were no longer two separate species, they were one unit, unified in purpose. As they approached the Krython command center, the tension in the air was palpable. Sarah could feel the weight of responsibility pressing down on her shoulders. Every decision she made would determine the fate of not just her team, but potentially all of humanity. Entering Krython space, announced Lieutenant Ramirez, a skilled navigator who had become one of Sarah's most trusted officers. His voice was calm, betraying none of the anxiety that gnawed at the edges of his thoughts. "Activate cloaking," Kael ordered, his voice a low rumble. The Sylari's advanced technology shrouded their vessels in a veil of invisibility, masking their presence from Krython sensors. It was one of the many advantages the Sylari had brought to the table, and it had saved them more than once. As the team advanced, the sense of unease grew. The Krython command center loomed ahead, a massive, ominous structure that seemed to pulse with malevolent energy. The team could feel the sheer power emanating from it, a reminder of the formidable foe they were up against. "Prepare for insertion," Sarah commanded, her voice cutting through the tense silence. The team readied their equipment, each member knowing their role in the mission. They had trained for this moment, but nothing could truly prepare them for the reality of the battle ahead. The insertion went smoothly at first. The team penetrated the Krython defenses with minimal resistance, their stealth and speed catching the enemy off guard. As they moved deeper into the command center, the sense of victory began to take root. They were succeeding. But the sense of triumph was short-lived. Just as they reached the central control chamber, the very heart of the Krython hive mind, a sudden, gut-wrenching realization struck. The atmosphere shifted, a cold dread seeping into their bones as the truth became clear. "Something's wrong," Kael muttered, his instincts honed by centuries of warfare. His hand hovered over his weapon, his body tense. It was then that Commander Lawson, one of the most respected Sylari leaders, stepped forward. Her expression, usually composed and serene, twisted into something dark, something sinister. A smirk played on her lips as she looked at Sarah, her eyes glinting with malicious intent. "Lawson, what are you doing?" Sarah demanded, her heart pounding in her chest. The unease she had felt earlier now surged into full-blown panic. Lysara's response was cold and calculating. "I'm doing what I was sent here to do," she replied, her voice dripping with disdain. "The Krythons offered me something far greater than what this pathetic alliance could ever provide." Before anyone could react, Lysara activated a hidden device embedded in the control panel. Alarms blared, and the chamber was flooded with Krython soldiers, their armor gleaming in the dim light. It was a trap, an ambush meticulously planned by the very person they had trusted. Chaos erupted as the team was thrown into a desperate fight for survival. The Krythons swarmed the chamber, their superior numbers overwhelming the joint force. The betrayal cut deep, shattering the fragile trust that had been built between humans and Sylari. Sarah fought with everything she had, her weapon a blur of motion as she took down Krython after Krython. But it was a losing battle. The team was outnumbered, outgunned, and outmaneuvered. One by one, her comrades fell, brave souls who had trusted in their mission, only to be betrayed by one of their own. General Kael fought valiantly beside her, his movements a deadly dance of precision and power. But even he could not turn the tide. The Krythons closed in, their victory all but assured. "Fall back," Sarah shouted, her voice raw with grief and fury. "We have to get out of here." With great effort, Sarah and Kael managed to break through the Krython lines, their retreat a desperate bid for survival. The losses were staggering, the mission a catastrophic failure. The weight of Lysara's betrayal hung heavy over them as they fled, leaving behind the bodies of their fallen comrades. They barely escaped with their lives, their ships streaking through space as they raced back to the safety of their base. The once unified alliance was now fractured, the trust that had been painstakingly built shattered in an instant. Back at the base, the mood was somber, the air thick with sorrow and anger. The betrayal had cut deep, and the scars would take time to heal, if they ever did. Sarah and Kael were met with silence as they returned, the loss of life weighing heavily on their shoulders. The human leadership was in disarray, their faith in the Sylari all but destroyed. Accusations flew, tempers flared, and the alliance teetered on the brink of collapse. But in the midst of the turmoil, Sarah knew that giving up was not an option. The Krythons were still out there, their threat more imminent than ever. They had lost this battle, but the war was far from over. "We need to regroup," Sarah said, her voice steady despite the chaos around her. "We've been betrayed, but we can't let that be the end. We have to find a way to rebuild this alliance. If we don't, the Krythons will destroy us all." Kael nodded, his respect for the human captain unwavering. "We will find a way, Sarah. The Krythons may have won this battle, but the war is far from over. We must remain united, or we will surely fall." The road ahead was uncertain, fraught with danger and distrust. But Sarah knew one thing for sure. They could not afford to let the betrayal define them. They had to keep fighting, keep pushing forward, no matter the cost. For the fate of both their species depended on it. Chapter 4. The Revelation. The atmosphere within the human Sylari base was tense, filled with the weight of recent betrayal and loss. Distrust festered like an open wound, threatening to tear apart what remained of the fragile alliance. Sarah Lawson, however, refused to let despair take hold. She had survived too much, lost too many, to let this be the end. Days had passed since the ambush, and Sarah had barely rested. She scoured every detail, analyzed every report, and replayed the mission in her mind, searching for the truth hidden beneath layers of deception. The betrayal by Commander Lysara had shattered their confidence, but Sarah knew there was more to this than a simple act of treachery. She needed answers. Her investigation led her to the depths of the Sylari archives, a vast repository of knowledge guarded closely by their kind. It was a place few humans had ever seen, let alone accessed. With the permission of General Kael, Sarah was granted entry, her presence an anomaly in the hallowed halls of Sylari wisdom. The archives were a labyrinth of data, ancient and intricate. Holographic displays shimmered around her, casting eerie shadows as she delved into the past. It was there, amidst the countless records of Sylari history, that she began to unravel the threads of a sinister conspiracy. The Krythons had not just been at war with the Sylari, they had been manipulating them along with humanity for centuries. Sarah uncovered records of Krython infiltration into both societies, subtle but pervasive. The Krythons had orchestrated conflicts, sowed distrust, and weakened both species, all in preparation for their final assault. Her heart pounded as she uncovered more evidence. The Krythons were not merely conquerors, they were annihilators. Their ultimate goal was the total eradication of both humans and Sylari. The wars, the betrayals, the endless cycles of violence, it had all been part of a grand design to pit the two species against each other, ensuring their mutual destruction. But as she dug deeper, Sarah found something unexpected, a glimmer of hope amidst the darkness. There existed a hidden faction within the Sylari, a group that had seen through the Krythons' deception long ago. This secretive alliance had been working in the shadows, gathering intelligence and preparing for the day when they could strike back. Sarah knew this faction could be the key to turning the tide of the war. Armed with their knowledge and resources, they could expose the Krython spy network and bring the truth to light. But first, she needed to find them. With General Kael's help, Sarah traced the elusive group to a secluded outpost, far from the prying eyes of the Krython infiltrators. The outpost was hidden deep within a Sylari sanctuary, protected by ancient technologies that even the Krythons had failed to penetrate. Upon arrival, Sarah and Kael were greeted by the leader of the hidden faction, an elder Sylari named Arendor. His presence exuded wisdom and power, his age evident in the lines etched across his face. Yet his eyes burned with a fierce determination, a resolve born of centuries of resistance. "You've come seeking the truth," Arendor said, his voice resonating with a gravity that commanded attention. "And you found it. The Krythons have woven their web of lies for far too long. It is time to cut those threads and reveal their true nature to the world." Arendor led them through the outpost, revealing caches of hidden knowledge and advanced technologies the Sylari had kept secret. They had been biding their time, waiting for the right moment to strike. And now, with the Krython plot exposed, that moment had finally arrived. Sarah felt a surge of hope. For the first time since the betrayal, she saw a clear path forward. But she knew that convincing both humans and Sylari to trust each other again would be no easy task. The wounds were fresh, and the memories of Lysara's treachery still lingered. "We must expose the Krython spy network," Sarah insisted, her voice firm. "Only by showing our people the truth can we rebuild the trust that was shattered." Kael nodded in agreement, his respect for Sarah growing with each passing moment. "Agreed, but we must act quickly. The Krythons will not hesitate to strike again once they realize we know the truth." Together, they devised a plan to reveal the Krython infiltrators. Arendor's faction provided crucial intelligence, identifying key Krython operatives embedded within both human and Sylari ranks. It was a risky operation, one that required precise coordination and unwavering resolve. The operation began with a series of covert strikes, targeting Krython agents across various military and political institutions. Each success bolstered their cause, revealing the depth of Krython influence. As the evidence mounted, the truth became undeniable, and the tide began to turn. Sarah and Kael made a public announcement, exposing the Krython conspiracy to the world. They laid bare the extent of the enemy's deception, showing how both species had been manipulated into fighting each other, while the Krythons prepared for their final blow. The reaction was immediate and powerful. The revelation sent shockwaves through both human and Sylari societies. Those who had doubted the alliance now saw the necessity of unity. The enemy was no longer just an external force. It was a hidden cancer that had infiltrated their very ranks. As the alliance began to heal, Sarah and Kael found themselves at the forefront of a renewed coalition, stronger and more determined than ever before. The bond between humans and Sylari was reforged, not out of necessity, but out of shared purpose and understanding. With Arendor's guidance, the Alliance prepared for the final confrontation with the Krythons. The enemy's weakness had been exposed, their plans laid bare. And now, united and resolute, the two species stood ready to face their common foe. But as the final battle loomed, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that there was still more to uncover, more secrets waiting in the shadows. The Krythons had been cunning, and their manipulations had run deep. What else had they hidden? What other surprises lay in wait? The thought lingered in her mind as they prepared for war, a nagging doubt that refused to be silenced. The revelation had brought them closer, but it had also shown just how much they still didn't know. And in the darkness of space, the Krythons watched, their eyes gleaming with malevolent intent. The war was far from over, and the final chapter had yet to be written. Chapter 5: The Final Battle. The sky above Earth was ablaze with the glow of thousands of starships, human and Sylari vessels side by side, forming an armada unlike any seen before. As they approached the Krython stronghold, the tension in the air was palpable. The final battle had arrived, and the fate of 3 species hung in the balance. Captain Sarah Lawson stood on the bridge of her command ship, her eyes locked on the massive Krython fleet ahead. The united forces of humanity and the Sylari were about to face their greatest challenge, and Sarah could feel the weight of it pressing down on her. This battle would determine the future of their worlds. All units, prepare for engagement, Sarah ordered, her voice calm and steady, betraying none of the anxiety churning inside her. Around her, the crew moved with precision, each one focused on the task at hand. There was no room for fear now, only resolve. General Kael's image appeared on the holo screen, his expression as determined as ever. "The Krython defenses are formidable, but we have the element of surprise," he said. "Remember, our goal is not just to win this battle, but to end the war. We fight for more than just survival. We fight for peace." The two exchanged a silent nod, a final acknowledgement of the trust they had built. This was their moment, and they would face it together. As the fleets closed in on each other, the void of space erupted into chaos. Beams of energy, plasma torpedoes, and missiles streaked across the battlefield, lighting up the darkness with deadly brilliance. The united forces pressed forward, their determination unwavering as they engaged the Krythons in a brutal, all-out assault. But as the battle raged on, something unexpected began to happen. A darkness, unlike anything they had encountered before, began to spread across the battlefield. Ships were engulfed in it, their systems failing, their crews overwhelmed by a sudden, inexplicable terror. On the command ship, alarms blared as Sarah watched the darkness approach. "What is that?" she demanded, her heart racing. "All systems, report." But before anyone could answer, the darkness reached out, engulfing the ship in a suffocating shadow. Sarah felt an overwhelming sense of dread wash over her, a fear so profound it nearly paralyzed her. And then, in the depths of that darkness, she saw it, the Void. The Void was not a mere entity. It was a force, an ancient power that fed on fear and hatred, corrupting everything it touched. It had consumed the Krythons long ago, turning them from a peaceful race into instruments of destruction. Now, it sought to do the same to humanity and the Sylari. As the Void's influence spread, the battle began to turn. Ships faltered, soldiers succumbed to despair, and the united front wavered. The Krythons, driven by the Void's will, fought with a ferocity that seemed unstoppable. But amidst the chaos, General Kael's voice cut through the fear. "Listen to me, all of you," he shouted, his voice strong and commanding. "The Void is the true enemy here. It feeds on our fear, our hatred. We must resist it, not with weapons, but with our will. We must stand together, united." Sarah felt a spark of hope ignite within her. She knew Kael was right. The Void thrived on division, on the very emotions that had fueled this war. To defeat it, they had to rise above it, to embrace the unity they had fought so hard to achieve. "All ships focus on the Krython command vessel," Sarah ordered, her voice steady once more. "We need to break the Void's hold on them." The united forces rallied, their resolve renewed. With Kael leading the charge, they pushed forward, breaking through the Krython lines. The Krython command vessel loomed ahead, a massive behemoth of metal and darkness, the heart of the Void's corruption. But the Void was not about to let go easily. As the Allied forces neared the command ship, the darkness intensified, and the Void itself seemed to manifest, a swirling vortex of malevolence that threatened to consume them all. In that moment, General Kael made a decision. "Sarah," he said, his voice calm and resolute, "there's only one way to destroy the Void. It must be confronted directly. I'm going in." Sarah's heart clenched. "Kael, no, there has to be another way." "There isn't," Kael replied, a sad smile touching his lips. "The Void's corruption is too deep. It has to be purged from within. This is the only way to free the Krythons, to save us all." Before Sarah could protest further, Kael's ship broke formation, charging directly into the heart of the Void. As it plunged into the darkness, Sarah felt a profound sense of loss, but also a deep respect for the Sylari general's courage. The Void reacted violently, the darkness writhing as it tried to consume Kael's ship. But Kael's will was stronger. As he reached the core of the Krython command vessel, he activated the ship's self-destruct sequence, channeling all its energy into one final, devastating blast. The explosion was blinding, a burst of light that tore through the darkness, obliterating the Void and its hold on the Krythons. For a moment, the entire battlefield was silent, as if the universe itself was holding its breath. Then, the darkness began to dissipate, the shadows receding as light and clarity returned. The Krython ships, no longer under the Void's influence, faltered. Without their malevolent master, they ceased their attack, their weapons falling silent. Sarah watched in awe as the once mighty Krython fleet came to a standstill. The war was over. General Kael had sacrificed himself to destroy the Void, saving not only his people, but also those who had once been their enemies. In the aftermath, the Krythons, now free from the Void's corruption, reached out to the humans in Sylari. They sought forgiveness and offered to join the Alliance, recognizing the strength and unity that had broken the Void's hold. Sarah stood on the bridge, gazing out at the stars, her heart heavy with the loss of a friend, but filled with hope for the future. The war had taught them all a valuable lesson, one that would resonate through the ages. It was not strength alone that had won the day, but the power of unity, trust, and understanding. As the alliance between humans, Sylari, and reformed Krythons took shape, a new era dawned. The scars of war would take time to heal, but the bonds forged in battle would ensure a lasting peace. And as Sarah reflected on all that had transpired, she knew that Kael's sacrifice had not been in vain. He had shown them the way forward, a path not of fear and hatred, but of cooperation and hope. The galaxy was vast, full of wonders and dangers yet to be discovered. But whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, stronger and more united than ever before. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, leave a comment, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more amazing short story. See you in the next one.